What's up, everybody? This is David, and today we're going to be talking about the new Bloomberg article talking about Redfall and how some developers anonymously have been talking trash about Redfall and basically what went wrong in the development of Redfall. So we're going to be reading a little bit of this article and kind of talking about it at the same time. So what do I think? First of all, Redfall, I did play the game a few times, first on cloud gaming, and then when I got my PC now, I have been playing a little bit, and this is you seeing footage from me playing the game on my PC. But I think the game is pretty lackluster. The AI is really bad. It's either on and off. Sometimes they'll barely notice you. Their traversal skills are real bad. They'll get stuck in a lot of weird places, or they'll all just kind of run at you all at the same time and shoot at you like mindless zombies. The gunplay is pretty lackluster as well. The animations are very basic. Kind of feels like a free-to-play game, to be honest. Also, the graphics are pretty atrocious. The textures, the lighting, the overall ambient occlusion of the game, the colors, everything looks very bland and just kind of looks like it should have come out for the Xbox One, to be perfectly honest. Does not look like a next-gen game at all. And it actually really baffles me that it only runs at 30 FPS on the Xbox Series X. That just tells you further on how badly this game is optimized. Now we're going to start off the top here. But to the makers of Redfall, the mediocre reception was no big surprise. The project suffered from unclear direction, frequent attrition, and perennial lack of staff. According to more than a dozen people who worked on the game, speaking anonymously because they were not authorized to discuss it publicly. A spokesperson for Redfall's publisher, Bethesda Softworks, declined to comment. So it seems like the developers were not authorized to discuss the development of the game. However, these employees, these developers actually had to come out and talk about the game just because of the terrible reception that the game has been getting, and because these developers, didn't really want to make the game in general. They are known for making single player sim games, right? Immersive sims. They're not known for making these multiplayer looter shooters. All right, going down here says that the development of Redfall began in 2018. At the time, ZeniMax, the large privately held owner of Bethesda Softworks, was looking to sell itself. Behind the scenes, the company was encouraging its studios to develop games that could generate revenue beyond the initial sales, a popular trend dubbed games as a service, which was taking off in the late 2010s thanks to lucrative hits like Overwatch and Fortnite. It was originally planned as a looter shooter, and this was the trend in that time because games like Fortnite, games like Overwatch have been taken off from that service. However, those games had a really good foundation. They still do. They're fun to play. That's what made them fun in the first place. That's what made it enjoyable for people. And that's what had people coming back for more, right? Is because foundationally, they are great games in and of themselves. And we see time and time again that a lot of publishers are making these developers make these games that are looter shooters, but they're usually half-baked and are foundationally just terrible games. They're not fun to play whatsoever, and that's why a lot of them have failed. They're just chasing this trend and not looking at what makes a game a good game in the first place. All right, reading on here. Says that according to people familiar with the process, ZeniMax was strongly urging developers at its subsidiaries to implement microtransactions, that is, recurring opportunities within games for players to spend real money, say outfitting their characters. Although this wasn't an absolute mandate, several ZeniMax franchises such as Fallout, Doom, and Wolfenstein would soon release new versions incorporating online multiplayer and monetization options. At Arcane's headquarters in Austin, Harvey Smith and Ricardo Baer, respected industry veterans, were tapped to serve as co-directors of Redfall, following the commercially unsuccessful release of its sci-fi shooter Prey a year earlier. Leadership across the company wanted to make something more broadly appealing. What eventually emerged was the idea to make a multiplayer game in which users would team up to battle vampires and perhaps pay for occasional cosmetic upgrades. You see, they were initially disappointed in how Prey did, because even though it was a great game, I personally never played it, but even though it was a great game, a lot of people say it financially didn't do very well. However, I think that is just because a lot of people don't really know about those games very much yet. I personally never even knew that Prey was a game. So obviously something went wrong with the marketing. Whereas Redfall, everybody knew about Redfall because of the great marketing. However, it just turned out to be a poor game. So I think game developers and publishers both need to work together to first make a great game and then also to market it correctly as well. Reading on here, it says that since its founding in 1999, Arcane had become known for games called immersive sims, single-player experiences in which players strive to overcome obstacles in multiple ways, from combat to stealth maneuvers. Yet from the start, Redfall was pitched to staff as a multiplayer Arcane game, which some team members said they found confusing. Whether the sort of gameplay that the studio specialized in would be technically possible in a multiplayer environment was an open question. So see, these developers are known for making immersive single-player sims, and that's what they're good at, right? So now they all of a sudden have to switch over to making this looter shooter that they have no idea about, and somehow they're going to have to implement what they know from single player into multiplayer, and on top of that, make it a microtransaction game at the same time. Reading on here says that the developers under Smith and Bear said the two leads were outwardly excited, but as the project progressed, failed to provide clear direction. So it says basically that management was bad as well, and they just didn't know where the direction of the game was going. Staff members said that over time they grew frustrated with management frequently shifting references to other games, such as Far Cry and Borderlands, that left each department with varying ideas of what exactly they were making. Throughout the development, the fundamental tension between single-player and multiplayer design remained unresolved. Smith and Bear did not respond to requests for comment. So basically, these guys are trying to make the game kind of like a Far Cry, kind of like a Borderlands game. Both games of which I don't think are fantastic games. Borderlands actually I do think is really good, but Far Cry, you know what I mean? It's all right. Like, they've been releasing the same bullshit every single year. It used to be great in my opinion. I think the last one I played was Far Cry 3, but here they're trying to kind of emulate those types of games, and even in my personal opinion, they're not that great of games to emulate in the first place. So when you're trying to be a copy of something that's not even that great in the first place, what you're going to get is trash. It says here further on that Arcane was also perpetually understaffed, said people familiar with its production. The studio's Austin office employed less than 100 people, sufficient for a relatively small single-player game like Prey, but not enough to compete with multiplayer behemoths like Fortnite and Destiny. See, those games staff hundreds of people and are working on the game tirelessly to make it better and better. With this type of game, you just need that type of workforce to make it good. Morale at Arcane suffered. Veteran workers who weren't interested in developing a multiplayer game left in droves. By the end of Redfall's development, roughly 70% of the Austin staff who had worked on Prey would no longer be at the company, according to people familiar, as well as Bloomberg analysis of LinkedIn and Prey's credits. Vacancies became a challenge. Within the industry, ZeniMax had a reputation for paying lower than average salaries, and convincing some progressive or moderate video game developers to move to Texas could be difficult due to the state's conservative social policies. Since Redfall wasn't yet announced, the studio couldn't describe its details to prospective employees, a predicament that exacerbated the staffing issues, sources familiar with the process said. Arcane wanted to hire recruits with experience on multiplayer shooters, but the people who applied were by and large looking to work on single-player immersive sims. The developers that are looking for work in these studios are usually very creative types, right? So they're not just going there to get a job. they're usually going to a specific studio, especially if they're good, because they want to make those types of games that the studio is known for. So by them joining Arcane, they want to make immersive sims. If they wanted to make a multiplayer looter shooter, they go join the Fortnite team or whatever, right? They wouldn't join Arcane because that's not what Arcane is good for. So when they join Arcane, or when Arcane maybe has listings for developers, and then the game that they're currently developing is a looter shooter, you know, it kind of kills your morale as a developer, because you're like, man, I don't want to work on a looter shooter. I want to work on an awesome new immersive sim. That's what I came here to work for. And we've seen a couple examples of games doing this, where they were trying to be a looter shooter at first, and then the development all of a sudden got changed into being just a regular game. Such examples are Battlefield 2042. That was supposed to be kind of like a battle royale game, and then it got turned into a multiplayer game. And then with Gotham Knights as well, that was supposed to be a looter shooter, and then it got turned into a single player game. But as you can see, it just doesn't work. You can't be switching up like that, right? And the foundation of the game in general is bad, because they didn't have good intentions for the game. Their main intention for developing these games as looter shooters was to get as much money as possible from people. It wasn't to make a great game. It wasn't a passion project. It was to get as much money as possible because they saw other games doing the same thing, like Fortnite, and getting a lot of money for it. So that's what they wanted to do. And in my opinion, when you have a set goal as making as much money as possible instead of making the best game as possible, it's already bound to fail. That's my personal opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and God bless.